Hello everybody, this is Fanfic Review. Today's review will be about Letters to Winter, a story supposedly about Weiss training Jean after a bet with Cardin proving she is better than him, but throughout the training and through the Letters to Winter, Weiss slowly falls in love with Jean. I just want to say before I jump into this that I am well aware that this is Malo's first Rwby fanfic, and by the quality of it, Malo's first real attempt at a long-form narrative, so I won't be criticizing it based on poorly written dialogue or obvious exposition. I'll criticize it in ways that I think are reasonable for a first-time writer. The negatives. This fic suffers from terrible pacing, focusing on things that no one is here to read about, terrible romance, over-explaining basic world building, taking 6 chapters to, start, characters changing on a dime, characters just knowing what Jean and or Weiss are going through emotionally, Yang and Rwby being really shitty friends. I will be going over all of these things in more depth in order. First, the terrible pacing. It genuinely feels like half of each chapter is just completely unimportant to what, the point of the story is. Oh, you thought this story was going to be about Jean and Weiss training and falling in love? Ha! Nope. It's actually about Rwby really wanting to be Weiss's friend for an entire chapter. How about we completely throw the story off the rails to go deal with the Blake arc from the show that's here for absolutely no reason. This story is supposedly about Jean and Weiss training together, and they don't even start training together until chapter 6. If you do the math, the first 6 chapters, the 3 that is spent dealing with Blake, and the other 2 she spends on Patch for God knows why, that's 39%. 39% of the story serving zero purpose. And I'm just going by chapter. If I got more granular and cut out each parts of chapters that didn't add anything, I'm sure it'd be well above 50. Genuinely, this story should have been maybe 12 chapters, if that. The romance. Now, going into this, I thought this was going to be a romance story first and foremost, but I guess I was stupid for assuming that. What I should have assumed was that this was going to be a novelization of Rwby, because that's most of this story. Honestly, this just feels like a worse version of Not This Time Fate. Both have Jean x Weiss, both go through all the canon events through the first few volumes of Rwby. The only difference being there is a narrative choice for Jean to be going through it in Not This Time Fate, and Jean x Weiss is actually done kind of okay there. Jean and Weiss barely have any chemistry most of the time, and Malo, for whatever reason, decided to not have Jean have feelings for Weiss at the beginning, and Weiss doesn't really either. The only way we can really see Weiss's feelings progress throughout the story is how she reacts to someone saying that she likes Jean. She doesn't act differently around Jean, and even when we're reading from her POV, she barely even thinks differently around or about him. And I straight up think that Jean ends up dating Weiss out of pity for losing that bet that Weiss started, because Jean never once seems even slightly interested in Weiss. A romance story without any romance. Bravo, Vince. Over-explaining world building. And I'm not talking about Malo Bound's original ideas for the world of Rwby. I'm talking very basic concepts that you would know had you seen the show, which I'm assuming anyone reading a fanfic about Rwby has. Now, when I first started reading Rwby fanfics, I hadn't seen Rwby, but I'm a bad example. Not that big of a deal, but it gets annoying. Jean or Weiss will go, I don't want to do this, and another character will go, nah, you do. And then Jean or Weiss will just go, okay, and then that'll be the end of the conflict. Like when Jean found out Weiss was trying to train him, and he said absolutely not, and then 5 paragraphs later, he is completely on board with the idea. And to be fair about that example, I know why it's like that. It's because Jean rejected Pyrrha's training in the show for the exact same reasons he does here, but Malo really didn't want to have to go through the hassle of writing a multiple chapter arc of getting him on board. Mostly because Malo had already wasted 6 chapters just getting to her even offering training. But you could have killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Have Jean still be into Weiss like in canon, so when she offers to train him, he instead would agree without hesitation because he would view this as a way of getting close to her. Bam, fixed. And now, the biggest issue here. Rwby and Yang being really shitty friends. Yang. Motherfucking Yang sooner side with the terrorist Zhao Long. Yang is fine for the majority of this story until the whole Blake thing happens. Completely unnecessarily, I'd like to reiterate. Weiss breaks down after meeting Sun at the docks, proclaiming a genuine fear of Faunus because of the White Fang continually murdering people she loves and cares about, and have also tried to kill her multiple times. Blake then pulls a Blake and accidentally says that she's in the White Fang. Not that she used to be, which is the truth, but that she is still a current member in the Fang. And I assume you can guess who Yang sided with. Weiss! Grow up. Blake just so happens to be an active member of an organization that wants nothing more than to violently cleave your head from your body, and you've been sleeping in the same room with her for the last half a year. You're being such a baby about it, jeez. Yang even has the fucking gall to criticize Weiss for making her pick sides. It's not picking sides to go, my friend is apparently in a terrorist group that actively kills my other friend's family members. Maybe I shouldn't actively side with said terrorist and then berate the victim of said terrorist group for freaking out. Does Blake get a pass from that just because you know her? Again, we as the audience know Blake didn't do any of that or that Blake had already left the White Fang, but Yang didn't and had no reason to suspect that. Yang is written as though she already knows everything about Blake and that she isn't a current member of the White Fang and that she didn't do anything personally to Weiss's family. Oh, and Rwby. Rwby, why won't Weiss be my friend Rose, never once stands up for Weiss. It's like one of those shitty Jean gets expelled because Pura rats him out stories where everyone's out of character so you can hate them. Rwby has a whole fucking arc of trying to become Weiss's friend, and then the second that friendship would actually mean something, like defending her against Yang during the whole Blake situation, she just ups and abandons her. The millisecond that friendship isn't easy, she backs off. She is such a slimy shit friend to Weiss. Rwby forces Weiss out of her comfort zone, making her do things she didn't want to do just so they could become friends, and when they are friends, Rwby abandons her. Rwby does not ever come off as cute or endearing, only as annoying and pushy. Weiss is straight up having a panic attack thinking she could have been murdered at any point in the last half a year, and Yang and Rwby show zero fucking sympathy at all. It's insane. Despite that massive thing I just said, there is a few positives, which I will go over now. Jean x Weiss as a ship doesn't really make much sense outside of Jean being into Weiss at the beginning of the show, until you think about the parallels between their families, which Malo masterfully lays out here. Both have long-lasting histories to aspire to, and both have had their entire lives controlled by this idea of living up to this standard that their bloodlines has set for them. While Weiss was forced to, Jean was basically prevented from doing so. I think the parallels are really interesting and well laid out here. It kind of comes out of nowhere, but genuinely, it has rearranged my view on the ship because I really never cared for it. It went from a ship that made about as much sense as Jean x Neo to making more sense than Jean x Rwby. Jean getting fucked up by a Grimm makes a lot of sense for the story, and made for an amazing scene. While once Jean is done being a human crash dummy, it slips into really cringy MCU-esque dialogue, but dude, while Jean is fighting them off, it is tense, it is action-packed, and you genuinely worry for Jean. You don't know if he'll make it out okay. Alive, sure, but that's about it. It is so good. It's honestly better than Kur's fight scenes. Though, Kur's not like, great at them to begin with, but still, Malo's first fic outdoing even modern day Kur at something, that's pretty good. And some characters are really well written. I think Jean and Weiss are pretty great. They're both pretty accurate to the show and are pretty well written when you're just there reading their thoughts. And despite how much I hate Yang and Rwby because of the whole Blake situation, Blake herself is great. She's accurate to the show and not pure evil. Pure is also pretty great, not that interesting, but Malo did the obvious choice of just not having Pura have feelings for Jean. Not sure why Malo didn't do that in going out with the Yang, but whatever, they did it here, so yippee. It can be really funny and touching at times. After the whole Grimm thing, Jean's hoodie gets destroyed. Weiss then hand stitches it together and gifts it back to him. It was a really cute and touching moment. And then Weiss having to admit to Jean's dancing experience via his sisters helping him to become a better huntsman was really funny. And basically every scene where the story sits down and does what's on the tin and just has Jean and Weiss training is amazing. You know I said that Jean and Weiss don't have much chemistry? Well, that's only when they aren't training, because when they are, it becomes the most amazing dialogue ever. Jean and Weiss in these scenes are actually a pair of people I could see getting together. And the biggest positive of them all, it launched the career of one of the best Rwby fanfic authors this fandom has to offer. Genuinely, it has inspired so many other authors to do the same types of stories that Malo would be kinda known for, like his crack fics, and I think that's an insane impact, only surpassed by Kur himself. I may hate this story than may seem humanly conceivable, but I will thank it for giving me the masterpieces that are Butting Heads and Breast and Show. I'll be giving this story a 3 out of 10. I'm sure every single person watching this that has read the story disagrees, and if you do, please comment down as to why, because this is a very popular fic. The story will be linked down below, so check it out. Next time I'll be reviewing Malo's story, Red Like Roses, Gross, which is Vampire Rwby x Jean, which after 6 years is finally finished. I'm very excited for this story. If you are as well, stick around for it. If you liked this vid, like it, and if you didn't, dislike it. Comment some new fics for me to review down below, and please above all else, have a good day. God bless. This was Fanfic Review.